Hello and welcome to LittleBIGPhysics, a series in which we try to figure out the mechanics of the world of LittleBigPlanet from the ground up. Last time, we searched for evidence for an idea of ours to explain what we had seen when we slammed two blocks into each other. Today, I want to take a brief break from that line of investigation and look at something a little different. Do you ever wonder if there's something more out there? Something just outside our reach? There are so many things to see in LittleBigPlanet, but no matter what you do or where you go, you're always stuck within the same boundaries, the same four walls. We've determined before that the directly accessible area within them is about 1300 by 1910 lengths. But what lies beyond those walls? We might not be able to go there ourselves, but that won't stop us. We have other ways of learning about what's out there. We'll start off slow. What happens if something travels beyond the floor, ceiling, or whatever else? We'll call this outside region out of bounds. It's actually pretty easy to just fling something through the wall and see what happens, because we're lucky enough to have something that passes through solid objects. Holograms. We'll take a hologram block and stick stuff onto it to make it do what we want before sending it through the floor. This is what one might call a probe. It's like New Horizons, but a lot less expensive, and way less exciting. Anyways, we just stick a mover on a hologram block, set its vertical speed to something negative, and we have our answer. It's certainly nothing dramatic, but something happens nonetheless. The hologram block simply breaks. It only just now occurs to me that we never had an opportunity to talk about objects breaking in LittleBigPlanet, but just know that when I say that, I mean an object making this sound and disappearing. What does this tell us then? It means that an object that falls out of bounds will eventually break on its own. We don't know what's breaking the hologram block, but my first guess is that there's a boundary that causes the object to break on contact. One way to test that idea is to track the probe's location to find out when and where it breaks after traveling out of bounds. We could use our graphing apparatus for that, but it can only run for so long, and I got a little distracted looking at all of its inner workings. Instead, let's go simpler and just attach a timer to a display. I've rigged it so that the timer runs for 100 seconds, and the display shows what proportion of the timer is filled. So, every 0.01 on the display corresponds to 1 second. The hologram block moves through the wall at one in-game speed unit, about 12.51 lengths per second, and the timer will stop once the hologram block is destroyed. Now, we wait. The timer stopped at 31.74 seconds, in which time the hologram block would have traveled about 397 lengths. That means there's an inaccessible region about 400 lengths deep below the level, out of bounds. Here's a question to consider though. Does this mean that we know what will happen if an object travels out of bounds in any other direction? What if it goes through a wall? Let's find out. This time, by tilting the camera, we can actually watch the block as it travels, giving us some more insight as to what's outside the play area. There's not really a lot to see. The block breaks after 29.07 seconds, corresponding to a distance of about 364 lengths. Testing another part of the same wall gives the same number again. It seems like the boundary that the block hits is rectangular. The top of the level gives us a whopping 39.01 seconds, corresponding to 488 lengths. And the right wall gives us 35.61 seconds, or about 445 lengths. Let's do some thinking about what this means about the composition of a level. We have a playable area within the walls that's about 1300 lengths by 1910 lengths, based on our distances episode. Adding on to that the distances we measured, there's a bigger region that's about 2110 lengths by 2800 lengths, which as far as we can tell, nothing can travel outside of, as it breaks immediately upon hitting the boundary. 2100 lengths by 2800 lengths would be a perfect 3:4 aspect ratio, which makes you wonder if our horizontal measurement was off by just a few lengths. Whatever the case, two things about this out of bounds region strike me as strange in particular. The first is that it's so large. If you compare the areas of the playable region and the greater total space, the playable area is only about 2/5 of the whole space. We can't even travel to the majority of the observable world. Second, the center of the playable areas and the center of the greater region don't align. Placed within the instant destruction boundaries, the playable area is off-center by a bit, for no immediately obvious reason. So, what do we do with this? To be perfectly honest, I have no idea. Maybe it could be useful if you ever had a practical reason for wanting something to go out of bounds for some reason, since we now have a pretty good idea of how far out an object can go before it's destroyed. Was the practical application really the point in the first place, though? There's something intriguing about poking and prodding at what's just outside of reach, pushing at the supposed limits of our world. I bet that the vast majority of people that have happily gathered through LittleBigPlanet have never had any idea what lie beyond the boundaries of where a sack person can go, and now we can have the satisfaction of knowing. Maybe we can just leave it at that. So, we investigated one of the great mysteries of LittleBigPlanet, just to run into even more. Why is the outside region so big? Why isn't the playable area centered within it? I don't know if we'll ever have an answer to these questions, but even if we don't know the why of how things are, at least we now know what they are. That alone gives us just enough for the imagination to run wild with possible explanations for what could have led the world to be the way it is. Of course, there's a nice feeling of security and familiarity in the questions we can answer more definitively, too. I'll see you all next time when we investigate more into the various characteristics of our little sack friend. Until next time, and stay curious.